And at 10, Henry. Now, there are many ways to consider Henry a victim of Purple Guy, but he's first on the list because not many of them are like as direct as the others on this list. Like, while we do see Henry killed by Baby in FNAF World, in the main series games he lives on to FNAF 6 where he burns in a fire, supposedly by his own hand. Unless Baby kills him before the fire, since he like cut her off when she was trying to do her whole thing, but that's just speculation. However, Henry was also the victim of Purple Guy's crimes when Charlotte died, as seen in FNAF 2 and FNAF 6, as well as in the books, since Henry lost his daughter Charlie to William when she was only 3 years old. Remember, when someone takes a life, the one who dies isn't the only victim, alright? Their friends, their family, anyone who loved the victim are victims as well. Okay, so this also extends to Henry's wife, who we don't know the name of as far as I know, since she may not even be alive in the games. So she could also definitely be alive in the movie, especially if William and Henry are. So we might even see both. That's a 2-for-1 deal on number 10. You're welcome. And at 9, Charlotte. Charlotte is one of the most troublesome victims that Purple Guy had. Being the first victim, Charlotte gets killed outside Fredbear's family diner, despite desperate attempts from her father, Henry, to prevent this, mainly by creating a security animatronic designed to be a puppet to protect other kids, but treat her as a priority. Remember the green bracelet thing? However, when it gets trapped in a box, it's unable to make it out to Charlotte in time to save her. So, in another attempt, the puppet saves her in a different way, allowing her agony to reach out and take hold of the animatronic. As the puppet, Charlotte then went on to share her gift of a second chance with the other animatronics, bringing them to life as well, resulting in William's ultimate undoing. So, in a way, Charlotte really is the one you should not have killed, but just like in like a name sense, not in like a character sense. Since if he had spared her, maybe none of the other animatronics would have been alive and he wouldn't have gotten killed or springlocked or whatever. And also, if you want to stay up to date on the FNAF movie news, be sure you hit subscribe, because as soon as we actually find out something concrete, and that wouldn't be like a 30-second video, you'll know. And at 8, Cassidy. Cassidy is probably who you expected to be number 1 on this list. The generally assumed one you should not have killed, the missing children's victim who went on to possess Golden Freddy, at least if you believe Golden Freddy to be an actual animatronic and not a hallucination. Cassidy is described in the novels as a young girl with long black hair, which also is the description of the only human to appear as a picture in the FNAF survival logbook, or security logbook, depending on if you read the crossed out name or not. I call it both. The name Cassidy was also discovered in this book when a theorist going by username DPowerful1 took wrong or highlighted numbers from various pages and put them into the word search as coordinates, in essence, which has got to be the most complicated name drop in history, okay? Like, we dig through source code, we put like audio files through spectrograms, we put them on reverse and speed them up and trying to find clues, but this was even too much for this series, okay? Like, I don't know why you had to go make things so complicated, but timely pop culture references aside, I don't know if Cassidy's going to be in the movie, given how the screenplay is the Mike screenplay, at least going off what Scott said on Reddit years ago. But in that post he also said that he scrapped the Cassidy screenplay, so I doubt she'll be a major player, but she could still show up. And at 7, Elizabeth. Elizabeth was an unintentional victim of Purple Guy, given that Elizabeth was in fact his daughter. Yeah, in the aftermath of his murder den closing, Afton sets up shop in a new restaurant he owned and operated called Circus Baby's Pizza World, where the feature animatronics were actually giant murder bots hungry for the flesh of children, because, you know, that's what the series has come to. Or at least that's what it had come to, and then it got worse. He warned his kids to stay away from the animatronics, especially his daughter Elizabeth, since she had such a fascination with the main star Baby, but she didn't listen, because of course she didn't. She's a goddamn kid, and you made the animatronic specifically to attract kids. So, in a moment of ultimate regret, she ends up getting scooped and insta-killed while Baby's arm grabbed her, pulled her in, and then like crushed her in her storage unit. Yeah, it was pretty brutal. And while he didn't kill her directly, he still killed her, okay? And then even victimized himself, since, you know, it was his daughter that got scooped, and the friends and family of the victim are also victims. This then leads him to discover his passion, but then this leads him to discover possession and agony and like the remnant metal thing. So yeah, I don't know how he knows that it was agony that did the possessing, but this then completely changes his motive. So it's a pivotal death in the Purple Guy chronology, so hopefully it'll be in the movie. And at 6, Gabriel. Gabriel was one of the original 5 missing children from the first ever incident that we learn about in the games. We believe his soul is passed into the Freddy animatronic based on the gravestone ending and the placement of the FNAF 3 heads. Gabriel, though, hasn't really ever gotten much of a description, aside from a brief mention in the books. But that description could also be referencing Jeremy, and based on Crying Child from FNAF 4's 8-bit minigames, it could also be him. So there's not really much validity to it, but I mean, I don't know, he could still show up. I wonder how Gabriel feels about being the mascot of the company, in essence, which is kind of weird. Like, he's not getting paid for it. And with over 25 versions of the character being present throughout all of the games, I originally had a theory that we played as someone named Gabriel in FNAF VR, since we ended up getting stuffed into a Freddy animatronic at the end of the game. But yeah, then I thought that Gregory from Security Breach was going to be a Gabriel comparison, because like, you know, whole hiding in Freddy thing, Gabriel's in Freddy, but then he turned into Crying Child. So who knows? I don't know. Maybe that's who Grant Freely is playing, since it's a supporting character in the movie. Maybe that, I don't know. Halfway through into number 5, Fritz. Fritz is also one of the original 5 missing children, being the victim who possesses everyone's favorite animatronic Foxy. Well, everyone else's favorite. My favorite's still Toy Chica specifically, because that one's not possessed. I guess in a way though, it was meant to be, given that both of their names start with F and are shorter than the other names. It kind of worked out way too perfectly in that sense. The others actually have similar names to their animatronics as well. Gabriel has the same amount of letters as Fazbear, Jeremy has the same amount of letters as Bonnie, Susie and Chica have the same amount of letters too. I don't know, it's freaking weird, man. But not much else is known about Fritz, and that's why I'm saying all this jargon. It's to extend the runtime of the video. There originally was a theory that Fritz was going to be a good guy who wanted to help the player in FNAF 1, but that was debunked in Ultimate Custom Night during an April Fool's update where Foxy's mechanics were changed to instead block one of the doors, and then this was also like said to be a joke by Scott, and he also added other mechanics like having Phone Guy and Springtrap connected, referencing the Phone Guy's Purple Guy theory and all that. But considering how Asher Colton Spence has been officially cast in the FNAF movie, I honestly, my first thought when I saw that kid was that he looked like a Fritz. Okay, his name is Asher, but he looks like Fritz. Orange hair for like the most orange animatronic, it makes sense to me. Okay, tell me, look at this kid and tell me that he doesn't look like a Fritz. He certainly looks more like a Fritz than a Gabriel or a Jeremy. Alright, speaking of which, in it for Jeremy. As I've said in multiple videos, Jeremy is the biggest fucking troll name in FNAF history, being used for 3 separate characters, none of them being connected, and only 2 of them are actually direct victims of William Afton. Jeremy is the name of one of the original missing children, and as I said earlier, goes on to possess Bonnie. And the other Jeremy is a playtester for the Freddy Fazbear virtual experience. The one who was testing the game before Tape Girl, who ends up finding Glitch Trap and then goes insane. And by going insane, I mean like genuinely ends up having a psychotic break. Jeremy ends up cutting off his own face, which is interesting given that the Withered Bonnie animatronic as seen in FNAF 2 is also missing its face. Huh. I don't know. It's interesting because Withered Bonnie is the animatronic possessed by the missing children's incident Jeremy, and then another Jeremy ended up cutting off his face. Now, I don't think it means anything, or maybe if it was intended or just a coincidence, but knowing the series, I'm worried that the smallest detail can have the biggest consequences. Hopefully, they can explain the recurring name in the movie so that we can all just like take a breather and have that load off of our backs, but I don't know. I can't look at people with the name Jeremy the same way anymore. There's a Jeremy in The Office. I can't look him in the eye. Straight up. I can't look anyone in the eye, but that's the social anxiety. Getting close to the end of number 3, Casey. Casey is the main character in a Fazbear Fright story that I don't think we've talked about much in detail. I might have mentioned the story here and there, but I don't think there's ever been like a whole number on it, except for like one time where I've talked about roughly the same concept. Casey appears in the Fazbear Fright story Dance With Me from Step Closer, the 4th Fazbear Frights book. She ends up stealing some glasses that when worn either reveal or display a Ballora animatronic dancing. Honestly, this is the first character that I put on the list, and the reason that I really wanted this list to happen, since the entire story revolves around how she was almost a victim of Ballora. Now, don't get me wrong, the story is very unclear in this regard, but it's generally assumed that the ending does imply that the little girl who gets the glasses back got snatched by Ballora, who spent the entire story slowly getting closer to Casey every time she put on the glasses. She returns the glasses to the woman who owned them, and then when her daughter puts them on, she starts dancing. And knowing the series, I highly doubt that it's because she's excited to see a 7-foot tall Ballora animatronic dancing right in front of her. Casey was very nearly caught by Ballora, instead having a little girl take her place, so yeah, I hope that she shows up in the FNAF movie because, first of all, Afton absolutely built those glasses because we all know how he felt about Ballora. So, it's still a victim of Purple Guy, still a William Afton victim, so calm your tits in the comments. But, I don't know, I want this explained because Yeah, I've been confused about it. But ultimately, at number 2, Susie. Susie was the first to die in the missing children's incident, which is pretty horrifying when you think about it, but also kind of liberating if you think about it in another way. Horrifying because, like, you get killed out of nowhere, and that sucks bad, but also liberating because while yes, you're dead, you're also dead. And you don't really have to worry about anything else, okay? I suppose not in this case, since they go on to possess the animatronics, but like, they don't have to worry about anything in their future, right? Just getting revenge, that's their only purpose. And honestly, that kind of sounds like the life. Not having to pay rent, and just doing everything in your power to stop a serial killer, that's like my kind of vacation. But I digress. Being the first to die is a pretty serious thing. We know that she was the first thanks to Withered Chica's voice line in Ultimate Custom Night. Keep in mind that the Withered animatronics are the original ones, after being decommissioned when the restaurant closes prior to FNAF 2, since FNAF 2 is still a prequel and the first games in the it's a whole lot. But the Withered animatronics are the ones we see in FNAF 1. And considering how the chairs and like the clapperboards seen in the BTS photos say Bad Cupcake, Susie is a very likely appearance in the movie, possibly even a focal point. So yeah, maybe this is a love story between Mike and Toy Chica, so I can vicariously live through him. And finally, in number 1, Crying Child. Okay, now this one is certainly going to be a bit controversial. There's going to be people mad at me in the comments, but there's no way that I could have done this list without mentioning one of the greatest debates of my DMs ever. The amount of people who message me on Instagram on a regular basis about the bite of 83 and how it wasn't William's fault bothers me to my core. They also keep saying that it's the bite of 87. It's not. Okay, they're two different things. I say this every time I bring it up though, the bite of 83 is not a springlock failure. It could not have been. The reason I know it wasn't a springlock failure is because the Fredbear suit was already in animatronic mode, meaning no springlocks could have had a chance of failing, since a springlock failure refers to when the mechanisms are being forced to stay open, and then the failure is when they close on you when you're inside the suit, okay? Plus, there's no springlock mechanisms in the jaw, and it wouldn't need it anyway, because like the jaw just moves up and down. I don't know what else to say. It would have had to be super powered in order to actually crush a skull, something that only William would be able to integrate, considering how he made the robots and is the suit technician. Alright, it's fairly cut and dry at this point. I don't know why people are still yelling at me in my DMs, but it's happening. I don't know, it could have been that he planned on using the Fredbear suit first as like his murder suit, and then his son got killed in it, and then he was like, yeah, maybe not, but who knows?
Number 10, Scott Cawthon. One of the biggest theories that I think most people are still hoping for, even given the controversy that surrounded the game's creator, is that Scott Cawthon himself will appear in the film. At least, hopefully his voice will. Many people have theorized and are hoping that Scott will appear as the phone guy. Some fans have even said that casting anyone else would be a disgrace, a travesty, because Scott honestly just nails it as phone guy and is basically irreplaceable to them. I feel like there are other performers who could also do a good job in that role, but I agree that Scott's portrayal has pretty much become iconic, so not having him in the role if Phone Guy does appear would be disappointing. I too hope we get to hear that familiar voice in the film. Hello, hello! And friends, before we move on to this next spot on this list, if you love what we do here at Top 10 Gaming, and if you love it when we do FNAF content, be sure to let us know by clicking that like button. Number 9, FNAF 1. Some have theorized that the Five Nights at Freddy's film will start at the beginning with the plot of the first game being the focus of this film. The first game had us in the role of the nighttime security guard and confined to one space, the office, where each night began with a phone call from the previous security guard that we're taking over for, the phone guy, who in his last days, likely his literal last days, even alive, recorded messages to help us learn our new role and stay safe. I don't think this one will be quite as literal of an adaptation if we get it, but I could see us getting the plot of a new security guard coming in who starts to notice strange things happening at the pizzeria that end up leading him to make a bloody discovery. However, I'm not sure if this will be Michael or not and what role the kids in the film might play. Will they simply become victims, or will they possibly defy their in-game fate with the new security guard teaming up to help save them? Number 8, Death by Suit. This is one we are all expecting will be headed our way for sure. I mean, considering how this is supposedly the end we are threatened with should we not be diligent enough during our first night shift, I think it's no surprise that people have pondered this might be the way someone goes when it comes to one of the deaths that we're gonna get in this movie. I think most fans are hoping that they will be pretty gruesome deaths. Now, you know, they don't have to be super gory to me really, but they do need to be creative in how they show or don't show but imply deaths in the film. And one of the worst ways to go would be the one simply that Phone Guy warns us of. How if the animatronics catch you, they might think you're basically an endoskeleton outside of your suit and then try to shove you in one. Which you know is a problem because you can't fit in a suit that has all the stuff in it that isn't pulled back, so ugh. Number 7, FNAF 6. I actually really love this theory for the Five Nights at Freddy's film. Pizzeria Simulator I think would be an amazing game to see brought to life because, well, I just think it would be a lot of fun. Think of the tapes that we watch that are in there to train us on how to best run our pizzeria and welcome us in. How much fun would it be to incorporate all that cheesy goodness into the movie? I personally would be super here for that. And then the end of FNAF 6 is completely horrifying with the fire at the pizzeria pretty much engulfing everyone and supposedly freeing all of the souls of those possessed animatronics. Although, it still isn't really clear if this actually worked in terms of the lore, considering that some of those souls seem to perhaps still be lingering around. Anywho, it seems unlikely that this will be the case, considering that many people already think, based on what we've seen, that the film will be more inspired by the first game. But it could be cool to see some of those cheesy elements at least incorporated into the movie. After all, the movies don't have to match the story or even sequence of actions from the games. The story for the films could basically be completely different, but simply inspired by that first game, with influences from any number of the other games woven into it. Number 6, Saved by the Mask. Of course, when it comes to the games, we all want to see that death by suit, but another thing that a lot of fans are theorizing and hoping for in the film is that we will also see someone else, the main survivor likely, dodge this type of death by donning an animatronic head or mask. I personally would love to see this. I think this addition to the second game was super helpful and almost just as terrifying at times as getting jump scared. The anxiety that builds up is palpable when you put on that Freddy head, and even the visuals that you get as you peer out from the two cutout eyes and hope that you acted fast enough to avoid that jump scare, I mean, it really is exhilarating and terrifying all at once. And imagine the perspectives that we could play with in the film, seeing this action both from the inside of the mask and perhaps from the outside as well. Also, there's just something terrifying about a person, you know, not wearing like a full suit but just a mask, well, like dressed normally. It's just odd and off-putting, to be honest, to me. I both kind of love it, but I'm also kind of terrified by the prospect of just that visual. 5. FNAF 5. The 5th FNAF game is probably my favorite game of them all, so this is one that I would love to see brought to life. I think it has one of the best narratives and is one of the games with the best sense of atmosphere, making it perfect for a horror film. It's easier to follow from a narrative sense, but still creepy as all heck. However, as I said previously, I'm not sure if this is where we'll be going, considering most people think the first game is the one we'll be following along more closely with, which, to be honest, fair. However, that being said, I still think the 5th FNAF game would make the best inspiration, especially in regards to the overall feeling of the film. At the very least, I hope the film takes inspiration from us having to navigate vents with animatronics in them. That seems like it would be a great takeaway from FNAF 5 to incorporate into the games. Cramped spaces in general are terrifying, never mind a cramped space where there might be something lurking in the darkness waiting to get you. Number 4, Sister Location. This time around, I just want to talk about the specific location that we know as the sister location, Circus Baby's Entertainment and Rental. I'm really hoping that we at least allude to this location if it doesn't just get like fully shown in the film. I really would love for us to have some kind of cliffhanger ending for the movie where this is the location we see at the end and it's actually shown to be deep underneath the restaurant. I know this goes kind of against some of the lore from the games in regards to what we know of Circus Baby's Entertainment and Rental, but I really think it could be a cool moment for us to showcase. At some point, I think this is a place that needs to be created for a live action project, so I'm really hoping we get that sooner rather than later, because we've already waited a really long time. Also, I just really love the idea of Circus Baby as an antagonist, and the idea that she might even appear in the film or somehow be connected to the plot would be really cool to me. However, she is intrinsically tied to the sister location in the games, so we can't really have Circus Baby without either Circus Baby's Pizza World or Circus Baby's Entertainment and Rental. Number 3, Vents. The vents are a place you definitely don't want to end up, nor do you want them to even exist in a FNAF game, really. I mean, they're the place that either animatronics come out of or that you need to sneak through, or even worse, both of those things at the same time. So I mean, Yeah. But at the same time, when it comes to a film where nothing can harm you, because you're just watching the film, you're not even interacting in the same way like you do in a video game, you definitely need the vents to be an integral part of the movie and how characters move around, whether they be animatronics or simply people trying to survive the night. Never mind he's in the walls. My god, he's in the vents! Is something we should all be screaming after coming out of this movie. Number 2, the end? One of my personal biggest theories for this movie is that it is going to end on a cliffhanger. I anticipate that this may even be followed by a mid-credits or an post-credits scene, like we now see with so many franchises that people build or are trying to build, primarily with superhero movies, but yeah, this is like become a franchise thing now. I can't imagine that they will leave us with a fully complete story because I think they'll want to leave it open to potentially continue said story elsewhere at a later time, should the movie do as well as many are anticipating. Of course, it also depends. I mean, you can have a complete story without a cliffhanger ending and still have it roll into a multi-film franchise. Just look at other successful horror film franchises like Scream, Final Destination, and Hellraiser, all of which kind of felt like complete packages but then continued on. Okay, so Final Destination kind of left it open for a sequel, but it still felt like a kind of a complete loop. It could have ended with the first film, but it definitely did not. FNAF could go the same way, but I feel like a more the killer is still out there ending is more likely all in all, just based on what we know from the games and even from the books. Number 1, the big bucks. Personally, I think that this film won't just be a single film. It will be an entire film franchise. How could it not be? FNAF is so popular and is already massive when it comes to the dollars that it rakes in, and the film, or hopefully films, could simply be the next level for the franchise, especially in terms of those dollar bills. It could help the much loved initially indie franchise reach an entire new audience, expanding its fan base. My theory here is not scary necessarily for fans, but is scary in the sense that it could lead to a ton more horror film content building up the entire FNAF CU, or the FCU, the Five Nights at Freddy's cinematic universe, or just Freddy's cinematic universe if you prefer. I believe that the first FNAF film will set up a whole series of other films which will follow in the franchise, or potentially even spin off into like TV series. Like, there's a lot of stuff we could do here. And personally, I'm here for that. I hope this film sets up others, and I hope it does well at the box office and in terms of the fans and critics' opinions, so that it can continue to build on the lore and the franchise we've all already honestly fallen.
At 10, the bite of 87. I'm gonna be straight with you. We still don't know who caused the bite of 87, or in reality, who the bite of 87 was actually on. Like, we have theories, like we have a theory that it was Mangle, that it was Freddy, or that it was Chica, and that they bit Jeremy, but the theories don't equal fact. This incident has been on our minds since the first game, and we haven't been able to come up with a definitive, confirmed answer yet. So, if you ask me, that's certainly something that I'd like explored in the movie. It's been like 9 years at this point, and we still haven't gotten a direct answer, and if anything, we've gotten conflicting answers. We thought that it was Mangle, but then the handprint on Freddy's face seemed to indicate that it was him, and then Ultimate Custom Night made us think that it was Toy Chica because she said, "Where's my beak?" lodged in your forehead. It makes it seem like it was her. We have no real answer, despite what you're going to tell me in the comments, because I know that it's happening. I know that you're all angrily commenting about how it's confirmed and it's canon, but it's really not, okay? Unless Scott clearly says Mangle caused the bite, all we have is theories, which means that it's still a mystery, it's still a question that I want solved in the freaking movie.
Number 9, why Ballora? This isn't really a super specific question, obviously, but that is simply because when it comes to Ballora, there's actually so much we really need answered. Chiefly, why? Why does she exist? Why does she sing such sad songs? What does that mean? Why did Afton make her? Why does she both seemingly want to help us and hurt us in Sister Location? I'm not sure if Ballora will appear in the first FNAF film, but I do think regardless, the film's existence provides us with an opportunity to at least attempt to answer these questions. How? Why? Through just simply allowing us to better understand William and his motivation for making the animatronics. While I don't know if the more humanoid ones will appear, we at least might get to see William start to get interested in that prospect. And perhaps there are real world people he'll interact with that will inspire Ballora's creation.
In at 8, the Stitch Wraith. The Stitch Wraith was a character introduced in the Fazbear Frights book epilogues, with each installment of the series giving you another chapter of its story. However, we have still yet to see why that character was introduced, and if it's going to be included in anything in the future. It's possible that this was like another planned antagonist, possibly for like the Security Breach DLC. However, these books started releasing before Scott also announced his retirement. The Stitch Wraith is a mysterious figure wearing Phineas's black trench coat, and it wears a white mask, which is later revealed to be the head of the Simon doll. The mask's features are drawn on with thick black marker. It has 2 eyes, one of which is just blackened out, and it was originally intended to resemble like the black eye on Simon. It has like a toothy grin with missing teeth. It has it looks like blood around the mouth, but it's apparently supposed to be pizza sauce. The rest of its body is an endoskeleton of unknown origin, and has Fetch's battery in its chest, and then it glows red, but like also nothing else ever comes from this character. So, I don't know. Like, what do you think? Will the Stitch Wraith appear on screen instead of on the pages anytime soon? Are we gonna like see a little hint to the character in the movie?
Number 7. What does Michael know about his dad? Based on the fact that Michael's mom is supposed to be in this movie, it makes me think that he probably doesn't know that much, at least in this version of the story. If his mom is present, this might mean that she actually hasn't told Michael the truth about his father, and is keeping the secret from him because of some terrible things that she knows about William. Or it could mean that Michael in the story is adopted and doesn't actually know the truth about his biological parents. Likely William and maybe, I don't know, Clara. I'm interested to see perhaps if part of the reason he takes a job at Freddy's is because he actually wants to get close to William, who he actually suspects he might be related to. That could actually be a good solid narrative reason for him to be snooping around, and could give him a strong motivation to stay at the job, despite the strange nightly goings on at the restaurant. I mean, we do need a reason for him to like keep coming back, right? And what he knows or doesn't know of his biological father could be the key to helping this other largely unanswered plot point make sense.
And it's 6, possession rules. Possession in the FNAF universe is very interesting. However, it's not something that we fully understand yet. There are a couple of things that we know, like how agony is one of the most powerful emotions that stretches out further from the body than anything else. But we don't really know if agony, grabbing hold of something, and what we call possession are the same thing. We don't know if, like, when you die, your remaining agony is what does it, or if it's supposed to be your spirit. We don't know if any of the actual rules, if there are any, regarding possession. We don't know if you need to be close to the thing that you're possessing, assuming that possession and agony are different, since if it is agony, you would need to be around the thing. We know very little about this whole thing, and it's probably going to stay that way. I mean, if we knew about the rules, it would mean that the series would also then be confined to those rules, but by never establishing them, the game can do whatever they want and we can't really question it, since they never said it couldn't happen. So, yeah, I'm just hoping that the laws of possession within the FNAF universe kind of get established more, so that we can use that to figure more shit out.
Number 5. How does William Afton feel about being a father? Honestly, there's so many questions that are unanswered that I need answers to about like just William Afton alone. This man is an enigma to me, even after all of these years. Something that has always super confused me when it comes to William is what his intention with his own kids is. I mean, how does he feel about them? Does he love them? Has he only ever tried to protect them, but, you know, everything maybe just went awry? Or does he somehow blame them for something and so has actually intentionally kind of set out to torment them? This is what I need to know. We have had no real answers regarding this. There have been indicators that in some ways William has, you know, tried to protect his kids, but then in other ways he's kind of done like just the opposite of that. So really, there is evidence for both him cherishing them, but also resenting them possibly. Is it possible he feels both, or that he perhaps suffers from some kind of emotional mental split? Maybe some dissociative identity disorder plays into this that we just don't know about yet? Whatever the answer, I feel like having this question answered in general will also help us to understand other aspects of William's personality and motivation as a character, and as a major antagonist in the story.
And for FNAF 3 ending. Which FNAF 3 ending is canon still actually isn't solidified. Most people assume for it to be the good ending since it takes more work and we set the souls of the original 5 missing children free, but in reality, we don't know which ending really happened in the main timeline. When asked about it in an interview with Daco, Scott Cawthon said that he wasn't going to answer that since he knows how the community gets with things, and cited the arguments over Mangle's gender as a reason why he wouldn't answer. But in my mind, that would just be more of a reason to answer it since we wouldn't end up fighting over which ending is correct. But that's a theory for another day. There was also the common 2-eye theory that aimed to explain that there were 2 souls inside Golden Freddy since Golden Freddy had 2 eyes lit in the bad ending. However, that is also not true since the character of Crying Child hadn't been introduced yet and this was the planned final game of the series. So why would an animatronic suddenly have 2 souls inside it? And the light in the other eye is just because that's how light works. It's simple physics. So basically everything about the FNAF 3 ending is still a mystery, but if the comments I've seen about the movie being the first 3 games are true, I really hope they explain this fully.
Number 3, why does Michael return each night? I touched on one possible reason for this motivation for Josh Hutcherson's character, but there could be a slew of other options when it comes to the answer to this question. Could be as simple as, a simple paycheck that Michael desperately needs, or the motivation could come in the form of a mystery that Michael simply needs to know the answer to. He could be an aspiring young video journalist looking to get the big scoop on what's really happening at Freddy's after the word got out the children had gone missing. I mean, any of these things could be possible. There are many reasons he could be there, but the fact remains that the games and books have never really given us a clear, definitive reason for this plot point in the story. All we know is we play as Mike, who maybe is using a pseudonym, since we now know thanks to game lore that he is William's son. However, as I said earlier, this might be less intentional on Mike's part. He may not know at this point that he is an Afton and simply be using the name that, he grew up knowing is his as his actual legal name. I'm still personally a fan of the theory that Michael Afton was once in William's care and for one reason or another escaped or was actually taken away from him, and could even somehow be Crying Child. Like, Crying Child is basically Mike's past self who didn't die but actually got like a brain injury and simply forgot his dad and the time spent with him or something like that.
And ultimately, and at number 2, shadow animatronics. One of the oldest theories is that the shadow animatronics are the first of the Springlock victims. This comes to us after the FNAF 3 phone guy dialogue that mentioned multiple and simultaneous Springlock failures, which some interpreted as multiple Springlock suits failing at once, since the term Springlock in this situation is used to describe the suit as a whole and the individual Springlock mechanisms that are present within the suits. So, the line of multiple and simultaneous could mean multiple of the Springlocks inside the suit failing at the same time, or more than one suit failing at the same time. This led some to theorize that previous employees were killed in the Springlock suits, which is where the shadow animatronics come from. This is supported by the fact that these shadows are from Freddy and Bonnie, the 2 animatronics that have Springlock versions, but there are still holes in the theory. And while there is always the ability for the characters to be explored and explained in the movie, which I feel like is possible because they're pretty damn freaky characters.
Number 1. Why does William Afton kill? I mean, this one has been plaguing us literally forever. We still have no idea what the motivation behind Afton's kills are. And here's hoping that when Matthew Lillard takes on this role, this will be one of the prominent questions in the front of his mind that he'll want answers to and likely want to give us answers to as well. After all, it's kind of hard to connect with the character as an actor when you can't understand the character's motivations. I'm hoping this will be built right into the script, of course, but if it isn't somehow, then I'm hoping we at the very least get an inclination from Lillard as to why William Afton does what he does. After all, it doesn't have to be verbally communicated or even have like a whole scene about it, but there could be at the very least little hints throughout the film that help us to understand the answer to that question. I don't think that's asking too much. In fact, I don't even think asking for a blatant in-script answer at this point is too much. It's been way too long.
And at 10, Freddy Fazbear's. While we might have already had a real Freddy Fazbear's Pizza with the delivery service that Virtual Dining Concepts was working on with Scott Cawthon, that was seemingly cancelled or postponed for the time being at least, possibly due to the movie. However, to make up for it, we did get set photos of the Freddy's location for the FNAF movie, or at least one of the Freddy's locations, since there could be more than one. But the one that we've had shots of right now is abandoned abandoned in the context of the movie. We originally got pictures of the facade being built, and then we got to see the actual sign and finally the finished set. Apparently people online were upset with the sign, which I can kind of understand but also don't find fair. Like, yes, FNAF is a huge series that could have had a more elaborate sign. This is basically what the Chuck E. Cheese signs look like, so obviously that's gonna be what they lean towards. Come on guys, okay? It's every fake Freddy's that anyone's ever made for a thumbnail, because it's basically just Chuck E. Cheese. It's also since been taken down since they finished filming with that location. And 9, Bad Cupcake. The current working title, or as some say the production title of this film, is Bad Cupcake, which is clearly meant to be a reference to Carl the Cupcake, Chica's faithful consumable companion. I say consumable because, well, Carl is a cupcake and I'm the faithful companion that isn't a food product. Well, unless you buy me dinner first. The title of the movie isn't actually Bad Cupcake. That's just the title they use as a way to protect the movie. So casting calls, booking locations, and all of that is done using the Bad Cupcake moniker. But considering it's the working title, I guess there isn't really going to be much significance with the plot. I don't think that Chica will be a key player in this, despite Susie seemingly already being cast, but it's probably just going to be like for a plot development thing because she's been cast as Ghost Kid number 5. That's just like a way to push the story forward and probably pay homage to a character that unfortunately won't be making an appearance, because I doubt that Carl the Cupcake is gonna have like a big twist reveal. And also, if you guys are excited for the FNAF movie, be sure you hit subscribe because we're gonna be talking about it whenever there are 10 things that we can then cover on a list. And at 8, cast. While a whole lot of the cast has been revealed so far, most notably of course being Matthew Lillard as William Afton and Josh Hutcherson as Mike Schmidt, there are at least, well at the time of typing this, 13 total cast members officially on the IMDb and a 14th that had the film on their resume already. That secret cast member seems to be Jessica Blackmore, who you may know from My Name is Vivian or Monsters of Man. Ironically, played a TV reporter on 5 Days of Memorial, which I find hilarious because it's 5 Days of Memorial, and then now their resume has them listed as Mike's mom. You know, 5 days at Memorial, 5 nights at Freddy's. It's kind of they happened at the same time. The rest of the cast is Elizabeth Lail, Mary Stuart Masterson, Kat Connor Sterling, Josephine Love, Grant Feely, Piper Rubio, Asher Colton Spence, Lucas Grant, Joseph Polquin, Christian Stokes, and David Houston Dottie as of writing the video. I think a couple more have since been revealed. And apparently, Mike P. Sullivan is in the movie as well according to his Facebook page. And at 7, Fountain Fight. Leaked set footage, or possibly just set footage depending on your definition of leaked, shows a scene where Mike is punching someone in a fountain. Or at least he was punching the water in the fountain, since the camera angle kind of made the second actor unnecessary. Plus, why would you hold someone underwater to punch them if you don't need to? But nevertheless, we know that there is a fight in a fountain in what is most likely a mall. This probably takes place closer to the beginning of the movie and could be the catalyst for Mike needing to find a new job, which would bring him to Freddy Fazbear's, but that's currently speculation. It's also been reported that apparently the scene is caused by someone tackling Mike into the fountain, or the other way around, with Mike tackling someone into the fountain, while a child also screams for their dad at the same time, which is probably the one that Mike is beating to a pulp. My guess would be that this kid and father were arguing, or that the child wasn't listening, and Mike, due to his previous trauma from the bite of 83, saw this as an attempted kidnapping, which made him spring into action. I'm assuming that this is after 1983, since I don't even think that a mall would hire a teenager as a security guard, and at this point Michael would also have no reason to have this intense of a reaction until after the bite of 83. And at 6, FNAF World reference. In this mall, there were also photos of an ice cream shop, which some people thought was Mike's job before security. However, I think security guard to night guard at Freddy's makes more sense than ice cream shop to security guard to night guard. You know, this isn't like Ant-Man after all. Mike isn't going to be working at Ben & Jerry's and then don a springlock suit to become a superhero. But the name of the ice cream shop is creatively Ice Cream Parties. Because, you know, I'm surprised it's not Ice Cream Parlor. And while it could have been a Chica-themed joint, it's not, because, you know, copyright within the universe. It's also not in the style of any stores from the Pizzaplex, so it's not going to be taking place there. But it does feature Chica's Magic Rainbow from FNAF World as its mascot. It's not really anything deeper than that. It's just a reference to FNAF World, which honestly I love, okay? Like, out of all the things to reference, FNAF World is probably one of the most interesting things that they could have, since after all, the clues from FNAF 3 on how to get the good ending are put in place because of FNAF World. So it's already a meta game within the FNAF universe, and now it's being referenced in the movie. So maybe this is a bigger detail than we could even consider right now. Yeah, time for the FNAF cinematic universe. Can't wait for the Avengers, which is just Ultimate Custom Night. Halfway through, and at number 5, Ghost Kids. As I mentioned earlier, the Ghost kids have been cast for the FNAF movie, or at least it appears as if the 5 ghost kids have been cast, but only 2 have been made official. Josephine Love is listed as ghost kid number 5, and David Houston Doughty is listed as ghost kid number 3, which implies that there are still number 1, 2, and 4. There are still a couple of unknowns at the moment as well, characters that don't have a name or actors that don't have a character name. Grant Feely still hasn't had a character name been officially added, and there are also a couple of characters with names that we're not familiar with. Garrett, Abby, and Max. These are all characters who don't really have in-game equivalents, and currently it's suspected that Garrett is Crying Child, Abby could be Elizabeth, and the newly cast Hank could be Henry Emily, meaning that Abby could instead be Charlie. But there's a lot that we are unclear about, but as it pertains to the ghost kids, number 5 seems to be Susie, and then Gabriel, Fritz, and Jeremy, and Gabriel, Fritz, and Jeremy could be played by Grant Feely, Asher Colton Spence, and David Houston Doughty. That leaves room for Cassidy. That could also be Abby or Kat Connor Sterling, whose character name is rumored to be Max, but considering the fact that it is rumored, I'm guessing that it could be that it's just a Cassidy that's older than we expected. In it for Vanessa. One of the interesting things about the casting is that someone has been cast as Vanessa. Yeah, interestingly, there is a Vanessa character on the cast list despite the Vanessa we know not being introduced until Security Breach, where she seems to be in her early 20s. And considering how Security Breach takes place after FNAF 6, which takes place after 2023 at least, it can't be the same Vanessa from Security Breach unless this is a robot-human situation like in the novels. But nevertheless, there is a Vanessa in this film, who, ironically enough, is played by Elizabeth Lail. I don't know if that's intentional, because there is a theory that Vanessa, or Vanny, was an adult Elizabeth robot, and that the Ruined DLC girl is a younger Elizabeth robot. But damn, okay, if that's not ironic, I don't know what is. Also, fun fact, I know Elizabeth Lail from playing Frozen's Anna in Once Upon a Time on ABC. Yeah, Anna to psychopathic serial killer bunny. What an arc. Getting close to the end, and number 3, sequels. Thanks to an interview with Matthew Lillard, who plays William Afton in the movie, we know that he signed a 3-picture deal with Blumhouse in regards to the Five Nights at Freddy's movies. So it's very possible that we get upwards of 2 sequels at least, which also makes sense if you look at it in other ways too. From a film production and marketing standpoint, trilogies have been a staple of various franchises for decades. The Star Wars movies came out in trilogies, Divergent, the Marvel heroes all get their own trilogies, not including team-ups, Christopher Nolan's Batman, Sam Raimi's Spider-Man, the list goes on. So, a trilogy of FNAF movies wouldn't be out of the ordinary, especially if the first one does well. I mean, if Sonic can get a sequel, I'm sure that FNAF will. And there's also the point that from what I've been seeing, it's possible that this movie is going to be including the first 3 games in the series, which would make sense if we're trying to base the trilogy off the 9 full games that have been released thus far. And considering how there's been a leak of someone who took a tour of Jim Henson's Creature Shop and saw Springtrap heads, I think that this has more weight to it. And the FNAF novels, which I'm sure also had an influence over the story of the films, are also a trilogy. So honestly, I think that this will do well enough that they're definitely going to get a trilogy out of it. And you know what, Jason Blum may even find the film so fun that he'd let another 2 happen even if they didn't do great, but I feel like they're gonna make a profit. But ultimately, in number 2, movie date. The movie is about the first 3 games thing also makes sense when looking at the date the film is set in. While there have been no official announcements, I mean, we know that the big moments establishing the plot of the games take place in the 80s. With Crying Child, Elizabeth, and Charlotte all biting it in 1983. In Crying Child's case, though, quite literally. And then the missing children's incident takes place in 1985, and we can't forget that infamous bite of 87. FNAF 1 takes place in 1993, FNAF 2 in 87, and FNAF 3 would take place this year, 2023, since the description says 30 years after Freddy's closes, which would have to be the FNAF 1 location in 1993. So they already have 2023 cars, okay? However, there was a casting call of sorts on Central Casting that asked for cars from the late 70s to 90s, which makes sense for the time frame of the first 2 games, as well as the other important establishing moments. Cause I don't know about you, but having Crying Child being rushed to the hospital in a 2019 Toyota Corolla kinda be weird in my eyes. If only they had asked for a 67 Impala. That's a reference that no one's gonna get on this channel. And finally, in number 1, Missing Children's Incident. The Missing Children's Incident is the inciting moment for the whole series. Without the Missing Children's Incident, we never have gotten the first game, which means that we're expecting to see something similar in the movie, albeit a little more tame, I'm sure, since it's probably going to be rated PG-13. But we know that there's going to be a 1980s crime scene thanks to a casting call found on Central Casting, searching for both adults and children for this scene. And I mean, out of everything we know in the series, it's most likely an MCI scene rather than a Bite of 87 or Crying Child death scene, since I don't really think that those would be classified as crimes or crime scenes. I don't know. And thanks to the Fazbear Frights books, we know that the missing children's incident takes place in 1985. So yeah, that's probably what this is going to be, and I hope that Oscar pops out of a ball pit real quick. In a 10 Markiplier cameo. Yep, you heard me right. In a recent interview with Variety, Markiplier was asked about the FNAF movie, and implied quite heavily that he will be making an appearance, saying, quote, "Everyone wants to know. There was a lot of confusion. Yeah, I can't say anything particular about that. There was a lot of scheduling conflict, and I can't say anything." Which was his way of saying that he's at least making a cameo, because why else would there be scheduling conflicts if he didn't need to have free time for this? You know, like if he wasn't in the movie, he wouldn't have had any schedule conflicts because there wouldn't be anything to conflict with. You know what I'm saying? And given a number later on this list, it's entirely possible that there are even more cameos than we were expecting. More on that later. Guess you're gonna have to stick around. And at 9, young Vanessa. Now, last time I mentioned that one of the interesting things about the casting choices is that someone has been cast as Vanessa. Yeah, interestingly enough, there is a Vanessa character on the cast list despite the Vanessa we know not being introduced until Security Breach, where she seems to be in her early 20s, and considering how Security Breach takes place after FNAF 6, which takes place post-2023 at least, it shouldn't be the same Vanessa in this movie unless it's like a robot situation like in the novels. But nevertheless, there is a Vanessa in this film. But now, it seems that there has been a casting call for a young Vanessa as well, meaning that the idea that this is a robot Elizabeth, but like the adult version, is less likely. However, it's entirely possible that the young Vanessa is just a younger version of one of the robots, like, again, a fourth closet situation where there's multiple. So, we won't really know until the movie comes out. And also, if you're excited for the FNAF movie, be sure you hit subscribe, because we're going to be covering it as much as we can, alright? Maybe we'll even do some one-off videos here and there, saying like, hey, here's something that happened. And at 8, Victoria Patnod. While there haven't been really many major reveals since the last video, there have been quite a few casting announcements. One of these is Victoria Patnod, I hope I'm saying that right, as currently a unnamed social worker. And this seems like a likely stand-in for a social worker who's assigned to Michael after Crying Child dies, as basically the therapist who tries to help him forgive himself and move on with his life. Or that was just like their way of like avoiding sending him to jail for manslaughter. This could be the case, and honestly I think that it is the most likely scenario, but I think that she could have more significance than that as well. I mean, like, if this is meant to be the first 3 games in the movie, Michael is going to need a reason to start working against his father, and a social worker that his father was paying for in an effort to keep him from the truth that Mike then revisits after he snaps for the first time in a decade with the fountain fight. Then that social worker revealing everything about his father could be quite the compelling narrative. And at 7, Dr. Lillian. Speaking of Crying Child, he's most definitely going to get bit in this movie. Like, come on, I mean that moment, the bite of 83 is the catalyst for a whole load of the series. Without the chomping, Mike wouldn't have had a reason to go against his father, and we never would have gotten the games. And since this movie is taking place in the 80s, I'm guessing that Crying Child is going to die either early on or in flashbacks, or dare I say, FNAF-shbacks. Eh? Sorry, I've been gone for a while. So when Tazaday Young was listed as Dr. Lillian on the movie's IMDb, it's actually very possibly the doctor that looks after Crying Child after he gets chopped. Originally, I thought Dr. Lillian would be the therapist that Mike was seeing, but after the social worker reveal, I think it definitely makes more sense that the Lillian is the medical doctor. Also, fun fact, Tazaday Young was in an episode of The Winchesters, meaning that the FNAF movie is in the supernatural multiverse, and by extension, the Arrowverse, thanks to that one Legends of Tomorrow episode. You're welcome. And at 6, Bailey Winston. Now, there is very little information about this one, but according to their Actors Access resume, Bailey Winston has been cast in the FNAF movie as Kim. We don't know who the character is. We don't know if this is a fake name or if the character is like the equivalent to a character from the games, but it could be that the character was created for the purposes of the movie, since there are more characters needed for a movie than in a game where the story is contained to only the aspects that we need to see, and everyone else, aside from us basically, are animatronics. So these could be entirely new characters that are being introduced into this series that could have no equivalent in the games, or it could be that they are meant to be characters from the games but with new names to show us that these aren't the same worlds, as a way to keep the mystery of the games alive and not solved by the movie so that they can continue to release the games and do well. Corporate America. Halfway through into number 5, Afton family. It also appears as if the entire Afton family has been cast in the movie, or at least is planned on being cast. Matthew Lillard as William, Josh Hutcherson as Mike, Lucas Grant as Crying Child, whose character is currently named Garrett, Mary Stuart Masterson as a female villain who could be the mother, but Elizabeth is where it gets kind of complicated. While with the mother and Crying Child we can be a little loose with their names, since we never really knew them, we know Elizabeth's name. So while some people think that Piper Rubio as Abby could be Elizabeth, that doesn't seem all too likely. I mean, like, we have names of half the Aftons as their in-game versions, so why would we change the daughter that a whole load of people are fans of? That seems like it would cause some issues. It could also be possible that the younger Vanessa that is meant to be cast is going to be Elizabeth, which would mean that the entire family hasn't been cast yet, but it's possible. Abby could also be meant to be the movie version of Charlie, Henry's daughter. So, since these characters are using names that we haven't seen before, it's difficult to know who could be involved, which I think is basically the point, since if pictures leak of, let's say, the characters Carl and Garrett doing scenes, we don't know if that's because Garrett isn't meant to be Crying Child, or if Carl is someone else entirely. So it's a good way to protect the story while also giving fans something to chew on and talk about to death, like us. In it for YouTubers. While Markiplier seems to be implying that he'll be making an appearance in the FNAF movie, there are some other YouTubers who flat out said that they were invited to the set to check out the filming. The four that we know of course, being Dawko, as well as 8-Bit Ryan, Razbowski, and Bazamalam, aka the Theory Thursday crew. From the looks of things, they're just going to vlog on the set and filmed content for their respective channels. However, there could be something more here, like cameos or consultation that they haven't revealed for obvious reasons. Although consultation would be like far less of a major thing, and considering how Scott is on set, we don't really need someone else there to consult them, but it could be like a consulting them from like a fan's perspective kind of thing, and how we as outsiders see the series without knowing the full story like Scott does, so who knows. Getting close to the end, and in number 3, Freddy Fazbear First Look. We did actually get a set photo of what is presumably the Freddy animatronic made by Jim Henson's Creature Shop around the time of the last part as well. There was only the one photo, and it was very far away, so the quality was abysmal, but if I'm honest, it actually gave me hope for the movie, and more than I had originally. I thought the animatronics for the movie would be CGI, or closer to like the Iron Man suits in the MCU, where only part of the character is practical, and then they fill in the rest with CGI, or that it would be an animatronic suit, but with a dude wearing a green morph suit on the inside being the endoskeleton. But seeing the animatronic without green and actually looking like what I pictured a real Freddy to look like is absolutely insane and incredibly encouraging. Blumhouse was put on the map with Paranormal Activity, and that was with a minimal budget, but with everything they can do now, they're not holding back with this movie, and it brings me joy, okay? I'm really hoping that this movie is good. And ultimately, in at number 2, Michael Whalen. Michael Whalen is now listed on the IMDb page for the FNAF movie as the composer and conductor. Whalen is a 2-time Emmy Award-winning composer known for films like Dallas Buyers Club, What's Eating Dad, Veronica Decides to Die, and interestingly, the Pokemon Puzzle League video game from 2000 and the Oprah Winfrey Show for one episode. So yeah, if they got an Emmy Award-winning composer on this project, you know that the sound design and atmosphere is going to be excellent. I am preparing for this movie to be terrifying, despite hating horror myself, but mostly I hate horror because jump scares are just too much sensory overload at once, and it messes with my brain to such a degree that it actually like makes me angry. Yeah, like, come on guys, being scared is not a good thing, people. But also I say that, and that, like, I say that I hate being scared, yet I was hit by a car a few days ago and only went to the hospital because I thought that the bike I was on was broken. That's why I'm Nah, I have the band-aid on. Yeah, if I didn't think it was broken, I would have just kept going to my destination, but I didn't think I had a way back to my hotel. So yeah, that's the only reason I stopped. I wasn't scared at all for that, which is super weird. And then I also was thinking while I was flying that if the plane crashed, at least I would be able to put my 100 hours playing The Forest to use. So yeah, fear is weird with me. Are we sure I only have 6 mental disorders? And finally, in at number 1, Springtrap. I saw multiple tweets saying that the FNAF movie was going to be about the first 3 games in the series, which didn't seem all that logical to me, because like, why would they try and cram 3 games and nearly 40 years of content into one movie? We all know that that usually doesn't go over well. And while Fazbear's Fright may have opened in 2023, which makes the timing perfect, we weren't really sure that it was true. Until an Instagram user in a now deleted post shared photos from their tour of Jim Henson's Creature Shop, which included multiple Springtrap heads, indicating that they're definitely planning on having him appear. And considering everything else, it basically confirms Springtrap to be in the movie. Probably towards the end if they're doing it linearly, but it could be jumping around a bit depending on the plot. It's also worth noting that there's another head in the background of the last image of the collage that seems to be extremely similar to Monty after being broken in Security Breach. But considering how Security Breach takes place years after FNAF 6, meaning decades after FNAF 3, it's unlikely that he'll appear in this movie, but probably in the 3rd that they have planned, considering how Matthew Lillard did sign contracts for 3 films. So they could already be working on their other props, but these could also just simply be remains from another project. In at 10, Henry Emily. Oh, come on, okay? Like, yeah, we want to see Henry in the movie, but it's also kind of required in my opinion. He's like a main stake, and come on, William, did you really think that killing Charlotte wouldn't have any consequences? Like, you killed your business partner's daughter. That's gonna be pretty obvious to him, especially when he was already suspecting something, okay? He took extra care to protect her, and then she still died. That's gonna be a vengeful father if I have ever heard of one, okay? And at that point, he added protection onto her, and that was vengeful. And he didn't even need vengeance yet. So then, you know, he's after you because you killed his daughter. So why didn't you kill him next? Alright? I don't know. Killing Henry could have done wonders for your criminal career. I mean, you're like, yeah, the cops were already suspicious of you, but as long as they can't find a body, you'll be clear again. And they won't put you away for the 5 missing kids. They won't put you away for a missing father as well. Okay, without a body, there's no forensic evidence. So yeah, just like finally off Henry and you would be able to stay yourself, or even like just this Springtrap. Which, if you were Springlock when you killed him, it would be a whole other thing, because it's not like they're gonna put a robot Springlock suit on trial. And I want him to be in the movie specifically so that it can be explained why he didn't kill Henry, basically. And in at 9, Springtrap. Speaking of Springtrap, I saw multiple tweets saying that the FNAF movie was going to be about the first 3 games in the series, which didn't really seem logical to me, because like, why would you try and cram 3 games of story and nearly 40 years of lore into one movie? We all know that too many villains usually does not go over well, Spider-Man 3. And while Fazbear's Fright might have actually opened in 2023, which makes the timing perfect for that, we weren't really sure if it was true, until an Instagram user in a now deleted post shared photos of their tour of Jim Henson's Creature Shop, which is the company making the animatronics for the movies, which the post included multiple Springtrap hens, indicating that they're definitely planning on having him appear. And considering all the other information, it basically confirms Springtrap to be in the movie, which I think we were all expecting, but it's still nice to know. Probably towards the end if they're doing it linearly, but they could be jumping around a bit depending on how they want to present the plot, and if Oscar's involved with a time-traveling ball pit. And at 8, Vanny. One of the interesting things about the casting is that someone has been cast as Vanessa. Weirdly enough, there is a Vanessa character on the cast list, despite the Vanessa that we know not being introduced until Security Breach, where she seems to be in her early 20s. That's what I was talking about in the intro when I said characters being cast that couldn't even be born yet. And considering how Security Breach takes place after FNAF 6, which most likely takes place post 2023, yeah, it couldn't really be the same Vanessa from Security Breach unless this is a robot-human situation like in the novels. But nevertheless, there is a Vanessa in this film who, ironically enough, is played by Elizabeth Lail. I don't know if that's intentional, because, you know, there's the theory that Vanessa or Vanny is an adult Elizabeth robot, and that the Ruined DLC girl is a younger Elizabeth robot. But if that theory is true, then we could technically be seeing Vanny in the FNAF movie, even if she hasn't become Vanny yet. Vanessa also being a robot Elizabeth adult would kind of explain how Glitch Trap infected her, rather than just driving her nuts like it did to Jeremy before. In at 7, Monty. Okay, now, originally, we thought that this movie was going to be the first game, like the first movie. But then, like I said, I saw tweets saying that it was going to be the first 3. But then, after we got the tour of Jim Henson's Creature Shop with the photos of Springtrap's head, it kind of became clear that Springtrap's going to be in the movie. However, it's also worth noting that there is another head in the background of the last image of that post's collage that seems to be extremely similar to Monty after he's been broken in Security Breach. But considering how, again, Security Breach takes place decades after FNAF 3. It's unlikely that he'll appear in this movie, but maybe in the third one that they have planned, considering how Matthew Lillard signed a contract for 3 films. So, I don't know, maybe they're already working on the other props. This could also just simply be a remaining thing from another project, because Jim Henson's has worked with like reptile exhibits and stuff in zoos, so could just be that. And at 6, Foxy. Fritz is one of the original 5 missing children, being the victim who possesses everyone's favorite animatronic, Foxy. I guess in a way it was kind of meant to be, given that both of their names start with F and are shorter than the other names of their groups. And the others actually have similar names to their animatronics as well. Gabriel has the same amount of letters as Fazbear, Jeremy has the same amount of letters as Bonnie, Susie and Chica have the same amount of letters too, and like, come on, that's freaking weird, man. But after that, not much else is known about Fritz. There originally was a theory that Fritz and Foxy were a good guy who actually wanted to help the player in FNAF 1, but that was debunked in Custom Night after an April Fool's update where Foxy's mechanics were changed to instead block one of the doors instead of just kill you. It was proven to be a joke feature since the other mechanics that were changed in this update had Phone Guy and Springtrap being connected, referencing the Phone Guy's Purple Guy theory, and Dream theory, which again we now know is not true. But considering how Asher Colton Spence has been officially cast in the movie, I think that kid looks like a Fritz. Alright? Orange hair for the most orange of the animatronics, it makes sense to me. Okay? Tell me that kid doesn't look like a Fritz. He certainly looks more like a Fritz than a Gabriel or a Jeremy. Just saying. Halfway through at number 5, Golden Freddy. Since the beginning of FNAF, the dawn of time, it seems, we have been wondering about the mysterious and seemingly supernatural entity of Golden Freddy. This entity that's able to travel through solid doors and walls, who causes us to have hallucinations, and crashes our game when they kill us. Who was this mysterious being? Over the years, we've gotten a few names, most notably with the gravestone ending in FNAF 6, but even with that ending, Golden Freddy's name had always eluded us. And if they are the one you should not have killed, or even if they aren't, the name wasn't given to us in Ultimate Custom Night either, only an alias. But alas, we were finally saved in this one thing. Everything else got messed up, but we were finally saved when the survival logbook came out, where after jumping through more hoops than poodles at a dog show or dolphins at SeaWorld when they just want food, we uncovered the name of Cassidy, thanks to wrong numbers on various pages somehow becoming coordinates in the goddamn word search. It was a lot for a name reveal that honestly didn't really mean much to the series, since the name Cassidy only appears in one other place, and that was the novel, The Fourth Closet, and the character is of little consequence otherwise. And considering how Scott scrapped a Cassidy screenplay, I doubt they're gonna have much significance in the movie, but I still want to see Golden Freddy. It's an iconic thing. In it for Vlad. Now, I know at least the vast majority of comments seem to think that the Immortal and the Restless series is like a linchpin in FNAF that proves that Afton killed his wife and what her name is supposed to be, but that's still highly unlikely. The Immortal and the Restless has never popped up again after Sister Location, and if it was important, it would've. There has never been another instance of that show having any significance other than just being something we turned on to watch after work in Sister Location. It didn't reveal the mother's name, it didn't reveal that Afton never wanted a son, because if that was the case, he would never have wanted Crying Child, so why would he have sworn to put him back together? And if he didn't want Michael, why would he have sent him down to get Elizabeth? It just doesn't make sense, okay? The Immortal and the Restless is something that shows up less often in the series than the name Jeremy, and we don't think that name has any additional significance. Plus, I don't know about you, but I watch The Flash, and I can't run at super speed, so yeah, it doesn't reflect your personal life. So basically, I want the show to appear on a TV in one scene so that we can see Vlad, and I don't know, maybe have like someone at a Comic-Con sign like the voice actor for Vlad at a Comic-Con. That'd be funny. I want to see that. That's the version. Getting close to the end, into number 3, Mangle. I'm gonna be straight with you. You're gonna be mad, but I'm gonna say it. We don't know who caused the bite of 87 still, or in reality, who the bite of 87 was actually on. I mean, we have theories about it. We have the theory that it was Mangle, or that it was Freddy, or maybe Chica that bit Jeremy, but theories do not equal fact. This incident has been on our minds since the first game, and we haven't been able to come up with a definitive and confirmed answer. So yeah, I want this to happen. If you ask me, that's almost certainly something that needs to be explained. It's been 8 years, and we still haven't gotten an actual direct answer. And if anything, we've gotten conflicting answers. Originally, we thought it was Mangle, but then the handprint on Freddy's face seemed to kind of indicate that it was him. And then in Ultimate Custom Night, we got the line of "Where's my beak?" lodged in your forehead, of course, which made us think that it could have been Toy Chica, but we have no real answer, despite what I know you've already written in the comments. Yeah, I know that you're all angry, okay? You're all typing out and yelling at me, but come on, okay? It's not confirmed and it's not canon. Unless Scott clearly says that Mangle caused the bite, all we have is theories. So, I'm desperately hoping that Mangle shows up in the movie so that we can have it explained. Please! For the love of God, especially if it's going to have the first 3 games and FNAF 2 has Mangle in it, so just do it, please. And ultimately, in at number 2, Circus Baby. Hello and welcome to Miss Mojo. Today we're counting down the top 10 worst anime betrayals, but it's FNAF. I'm gonna keep making that joke every single goddamn time. Maybe next time I'll say top 10 anime. In sister location, we thought that we finally had the first actually decent animatronic, someone that was trying to help us, like a prototype glam rock Freddy. But that wasn't true, alright? Baby was giving us tips on how to survive, she was helping us get through Balora's gallery, she really seemed like she wanted us to live. But then, what do we get for trusting her? Scooped and stuffed. Like we were just the family pet turkey around Thanksgiving. It was probably one of the most brutal things to happen to a character in the entire series, and it's all because we trusted Baby. She made us feel safe, she gave us confidence, prevented us from getting killed, only to use our body as a skin suit, then get kicked out of Entered not even a game later. God, almost as bad as my ex. This is why I don't trust Glamrock Freddy though, alright? Baby is legit one of the reasons that I have trust issues, and that's saying something. And finally, in at number 1, the Puppet. The Puppet is an animatronic puppet and a major antagonist, but also a good guy in a way in the FNAF series. They first appeared as the seemingly kind of like implied main antagonist of FNAF 2, but in the later games, they were showing the heroic side. It was like a Regina from Once Upon a Time arc. It serves as the prize vendor of the newly refurbished Freddy Fazbear's of 1987, and it's actually implied that they were originally from Fredbear's Family Diner, or at least its inspiration was. After the pizzeria was only open for a few short weeks, it was forced to close down, but the puppet, unlike the other toy animatronics who were scrapped due to possible malfunctions, was not scrapped, later appearing in the newer pizzeria from the first game, as evident by the dream cutscenes, from sister location, and appearing as Lefty in Freddy Fazbear's Pizzeria Simulator. Lefty was an animatronic that was intended to capture the puppet, and it's actually an acronym because it was possessed by Charlotte, and Henry, who was her father, wanted to capture the soul so that he could then release her. But overall, the puppet has significance to the story, and plus, have you seen the way that it walks around in FNAF 2 VR before it jump scares you? That creepy as hell. That needs to be in the movie. In a 10 Game Theorist Cop. Now, in another video, I said that YouTubers were invited to take a look at the set, but matpat wasn't one of them. And game theory is such a huge influence on the game's success that it really deserves its own mention. Something more than like a possible FNAF video game cameo montage a la Free Guy, but I think that the show of game theory specifically should have its own like reference or character, as maybe even like a crime podcast or online conspiracy website trying to sort out the mysteries of Freddy Fazbear's Pizza. I don't know, I think that might be one of the better ways that they can incorporate it, or maybe there's just an investigating detective that's named Matthew or is played by matpat. I don't know. I just think that like a little extra nod to the guy that really made the majority of us aware of the series is definitely deserved, if not required, especially by the fans. I wouldn't have known about FNAF if it wasn't for MatPat choosing it over Slender Man because of a poll, so yeah. But he also said that he didn't have an idea for what that Slenderman theory could have been. So maybe he would have just went with FNAF anyway, but I think we can all agree that MatPat deserves at least a reference in the movie. In at 9, Ballora. Some believe that Ballora was intended to be a form of mother figure for the Afton kids once their mother left, or died, or was killed, or whatever happened to her. Maybe she never even existed. This is based off the idea that the mini-Renas and Ballora are basically kind of like a family, and that Ballora is a mother to the mini-Renas, and the fact that there would be one for each Afton kid and then another one that's spare. This could just be William having mommy issues, or it could be that there is a secret 4th Afton kid like I've proposed in the past, although I highly doubt it. And if that is the case, maybe Vanessa is supposed to be that kid, hence why she'd be a robot. Or Vanessa just is like the human version of Ballora, so the kids wouldn't freak out because baby can change between human and not human in the books, and yeah. But then again, it could just be Afton wanting to be treated like a kid and have someone to hold him and make the pain go away. I mean, it's definitely not the healthiest option, but it's something Sigmund Freud would be proud of. So yeah, if she is supposed to be a mother to the kids, if she's not in the movie, it's gonna be kinda confusing. And at 8, Markiplier. In a recent interview with Variety, Markiplier was asked about the FNAF movie, and he implied quite heavily that he will be making an appearance, saying, quote, "Everyone wants to know, there was a lot of confusion. Yeah, I can't say anything particular about that. There's a lot of scheduling conflict, and I can't say anything." Which is his way of saying that he's at least making an appearance, cause why else would there be scheduling conflicts if he didn't need to have the free time to be in the movie? But within the FNAF community, this man is also a behemoth, having played through every game, most popular fan games, and then more. People call him the FNAF King. You can't think of FNAF without thinking of this man as well as MatPat, okay? But mostly, that didn't really mean much, and he was just a fan of the series until November 25th, 2019 at 9 AM EST, when a Lumix official released the official launch trailer for FNAF AR Special Delivery on YouTube. In that 2-minute long trailer, we see Markiplier being the one advertising the Fazbear Funtime service, which the game is based off. So, yeah, he's already, like, I don't know what's going on. It's unknown, like, what character he's playing, but in all honesty, Markiplier was already canon in the games, or I guess technically in the game lore, so he might as well be in the movie. Right? And if you guys are looking forward to the FNAF movie and want to know more about it, be sure you hit subscribe, because when we know, you'll know. Or maybe slightly after, because I still have the script. And it's 7, Crying Child. Okay, now this one is certainly going to be controversial, but Crying Child hasn't officially been cast. And I say this every time I bring it up, his death wasn't a Springlock failure, alright? I watched the MatPat timeline recently. He says it was a Springlock failure, but it couldn't have been. The reason I know it wasn't a Springlock failure is because the Fredbear suit was already in animatronic mode, so no Springlocks would have had the chance of failing. Because the term Springlock failure refers to when the Springlock mechanisms that move robot parts away fail to keep those parts in place, snapping them back into animatronic mode, and then that's when you get filled with all of the metal bits, which is bad if someone's inside. But if you're in a robot mode, there's no spring locks that can fail because they're not being moved. Plus, there's no mechanisms inside the mouth because no parts of the human would be in the mouth. So yeah, the jaw just moves up and down. It would have had to be superpowered in order to crush the skull, something that only William would have been able to integrate, considering how, you know, he made the robots and is the suit technician and stuff. So yeah, I'm hoping Crying Child's in the movie. And while we assume that this Garrett character is meant to be Crying Child, it could very well not be, so I had to say it. Alright, I did. And at 6, Charlotte Emily. Charlotte is one of the most troublesome victims that Afton has ever had. Being his first direct victim and seemingly second indirect victim, Charlotte gets killed outside of one of the original pizzerias, despite desperate attempts from her father Henry to prevent that, mainly by creating a security animatronic designed like a puppet to protect other kids but then treat her as a priority, which is kind of selfish, especially if you know that your partner is going to be a serial killer, but you know, that's aside the point. However, when it gets trapped in a box and it's unable to actually make it out to Charlotte in time to save her, she ends up getting shanked. So, in another attempt, the puppet tries to save her in a different way, allowing her agony to reach out and take hold of the animatronic and thus becoming one in a sense. As the puppet, Charlotte then went on to share her gift of life with the other animatronics, or I guess with the other victims of the original 5, resulting in ultimately William's undoing. But yeah, in a way, Charlotte is really the one he shouldn't have killed, but that's a whole other character, and basically she needs to be in the movie, and she hasn't been cast, or at least hasn't been named directly. So I don't know what's gonna happen. Maybe that's who Abby's supposed to be. Halfway through into number 5, Gregory. The main reason I want Gregory in this movie is because the knowledge that this kid has exceeds even some of my own. The kid is the size of a 4-year-old, can fit inside of Glamrock Freddy's cake cavity. He can fit inside baby strollers and other various small areas around the Pizzaplex. He's too small to drive one of the go-karts alone, but he knows how to restart generators, operate a trash compactor, start and drive a van, as well as identify a car battery, connect the jumper cables to that car battery properly, and then use those to fix Freddy's whole recharging every hour issue in one of the endings. So how the living hell does that character as a whole make any sense? And how do Freddy and Gregory make it to the hill without needing to recharge in that ending? Like, how do they solve that issue? I don't know, man. This kid knows more words than I do, but somehow is the size of a 3.5-year-old, maybe 4. No, okay? It makes absolutely no sense, and this kid's weird superpower is the reason Security Breach is so confusing. It would really only make sense if he is a robot that's supposed to mimic a toddler, but who's actually been on for decades and has been learning the entire time. So, if that is the case, and he's been on for that long, it would be possible for him to appear in the movie, so he f***ing better. It only makes sense. In it for Scooby-Doo. This is purely because I think William Afton making a Scooby-Doo reference would be hilarious. Obviously, I don't think that it's going to happen because it would probably ruin the tone of the movie, but I don't know. Movies or shows referencing an actor's previous work is not an unheard thing. There's entire compilations of series referencing previous movies and shows that their actors starred in or guested in or whatever it be. With shows from the Arrowverse talking about Victor Garber and the Titanic, or Brandon Ruth returning as Superman, but also Supernatural had a whole episode where Jared and Jensen played Sam and Dean in a world where Supernatural was a TV show. So they played their characters playing themselves. So yeah, productions making references to our world's dynamic in their scripts is nothing new. It's like when Bones had Emily and Zooey Deschanel on as like cousins in the show, but then one of the characters is like, oh, you two could be sisters. Okay, come on. Okay? And while those may seem like extreme examples, this is a series where a serial killer dies, possesses a hard drive, gets scanned into a VR game, and then is able to possess another person's brain and control them into bringing his body, which is stuck in a robot suit, back from death. So yeah, it's really not that far out of the question to have Afton say zoinks, or to have a dog that's called Scooby like walk up to him and like interact, and then have Afton flip out on the dog to show that he's psycho. Okay, something like that. Just come on, that would be funny. You have to admit. Getting close to the end of number 3, Kelsey. The story The New Kid from 1:35 a.m., the third Fazbear Frights book, revolves around Devin, Mick, and Kelsey. Devin and Mick are outcasts from their class and aren't really all that popular. They aren't cool. They aren't me. Totally kidding, they're definitely me. But when the new kid Kelsey arrives at the school, they make a new friend, or try to. Despite Kelsey being charismatic and adored by everyone, he still decides to hang with these two, which doesn't seem accurate. Over time though, Devin grows jealous of Kelsey, since Kelsey is everything that he wants. So in an act of revenge, or to gain control like some serial killer origin story, Devin hatches a plan to lure Kelsey to an abandoned Freddy Fazbear's and trap him in a springlock suit for a few hours. To like try to humble him, I guess? I don't know. I don't know why they think that you can trap someone in a springlock suit without killing them. But of course, the plan goes horribly wrong. After getting in the springlock suit, it fails, as expected, causing blood to soak into the fur of the animatronic and pool all around the ground because, you know, it's a book and they don't have to worry about game ratings. So Devin and Mick leave Kelsey for dead so they won't get in trouble, but then something doesn't feel right, so for some reason Devin returns to make sure that Kelsey's body is still in there, which is a horrible idea. So he sticks his hand in the animatronic mouth to make sure, I don't know why, and then snap. The spring locks fail again in his hand, not in the mouth because that's not where the spring locks are, and then Devin gets his hand stuck inside and bleeds out. But not before seeing a body in the suit with black hair instead of Kelsey's blonde. So I want this explained in the movie. I do. Cast a Kelsey, for God's sakes. There's no other, these characters don't have names that have appeared anywhere, so just cast a frickin' Kelsey, please, for the love of God. But ultimately, in at number 2, Katniss Everdeen. I also think it would be hilarious for Katniss Everdeen to appear in this movie. Not like as a way to connect the universes, but exclusively because of who is playing Mike. I mean, come on, okay? This guy's IMDb has him listed as being known for Hunger Games movies almost exclusively. Josh Hutcherson would not be where he is if it wasn't for those, and much like the Scooby-Doo or Shaggy reference, I think it would be funny to have like a Katniss thing in here, okay? Even if it's just a joke. Or make Mike really good with a bow and arrow, since like he took up the sport to try to relieve anger because his therapist suggested it or something, and then they're just like, oh, you're a natural Katniss Everdeen, or like, oh, you'd win the Hunger Games. I don't know, I think that would be the funniest shit, alright? Come on, you gotta have a little comedy in something like this. And Scott seems like the kind of guy who would be down for that. He does all sorts of random, unexplained crap in his games. So like a couple of passing references to past work that the actors have done, it wouldn't be out of nowhere. I personally would appreciate a Once Upon a Time Anna reference from the girl playing Vanessa, Elizabeth Lale. Please. And finally, in at number 1, Conspiracy Podcast. While Markiplier seems to be implying that he will be making an appearance in the movie, there are some other YouTubers that, like I said earlier, flat out just said that they were invited to check out the set and watch filming. The 4 that we know of course, being Dawko, as well as 8-Bit Ryan, Rizbowski, and Bazimalum, aka the Theory Thursday crew. From the looks of things, they're just going to vlog on the set and film content for the respective channels. However, there could be something more here, like maybe a cameo or a consultation kind of thing that they wouldn't have revealed for obvious reasons. Although consultation would be far less of like a major thing, but considering how Scott is on set, they wouldn't really need it, but it could also just be like from like a fan's perspective kind of thing so that we can understand the story of the movie and have it not get confused since we don't know everything about the games. I don't know. They could be doing something like that, but they could also be doing exactly what they did on Thursdays as characters in the movie. So, could Theory Thursday actually be a podcast within the FNAF universe? I guess we'll have to wait for the movie to find out.